to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Wednesday, April 17, 2024. This is a continuation of yesterday's meeting with just one item on our agenda. This is a work session, which means no decisions are being made or board orders, but it is a public session. And this is a work session to have a conversation, to start a conversation really about board protocols, about the role of county commissioners in providing for the safety of staff and stakeholders. And before I turn over to our administrator, who's going to give a little bit of a framing from the staff perspective and sort of organization-wide, I'm just going to note again, this is a conversation, an opportunity for us as peers to have with one another. This was prompted by a very specific incident, which we can talk a little bit about, but it really has sort of been something that has been bubbling and happening and occurring for a while, not just here at the county, but this is really an issue of concern in communities across the country around elected officials and their role in setting a tone or a tenor for how public entities conduct their business and interact with their constituents and also internally with one another and with their staff. I think it's especially useful that we are holding this meeting on the heels of some really good work we did yesterday, reflecting the good work we did over a period of time with our consultant, Marianne Highland, about creating working agreements with how we will communicate with one another, hold each other accountable, and represent this organization and our constituents while doing that. So with that little bit of preamble, I'll turn it over to our administrator to share a little bit of information and perspective, and then we'll have a conversation.
Okay, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Good morning.
Morning.
I don't have too much. I have some brief comments. I mostly wanted to walk through the documents that we provided to you all, what those look like. I know this was a board request to have a discussion about this, so I'll walk through that and also just share, I guess, some additional context around concerns that we've seen in other parts of the organization, in particular more recently. So a couple dates just to note that we've had some previous conversations actually focused on safety. On February 7th, the board had a discussion in Harris Hall. You remember you did a training, sort of like a compressed active shooter training with the Sheriff's Office to talk about concerns that could happen there. That also helped us and develop some safety protocols for how we respond to incidents, particularly in the board meetings. One of the things that is attached on this item and that you should have in front of you is the Board of Commissioners meeting roles and rules of conduct. This was adopted when was it originally? Well, the original date, I'm trying, I mean, it goes back probably to about 2000, I'm looking at Commissioner Farr because he was the only commissioner here, 17, 16, 17. It's been, 5-6 years, I'd say, that this was actually created as a result of, some public meetings, public hearings that the board at the time had in the community, actually in Oak Ridge, and there were there's some public comment and some concerns that happened and sort of some confusion about how actually the board should respond to incidences that escalate in a public forum. And so we ended up spending a fair amount of time developing this document, which the board has adopted, that really focuses on how the board interacts, kind of the policies and procedures for how the board interacts with the public. So it focuses on the public side of that. So that is in here. I'll just back up and say okay, so you had the February 7th discussion. I also wanted to note that our directors, our department directors, the elected and appointed department directors that all meet regularly, meet regularly, they identify, that team of leaders identifies a thematic goal every sort of 6 months. Right now, the thematic goal that our directors have established is employee and client safety. That is sort of the top priority and thematic goal that was established in September of of last year, September of 23, because we started seeing and hearing more and more about just concern that employees were having, concerns in the field in different places. I will tell you that just in the past week, today's Wednesday, so a week ago Wednesday, within the course of about 2 hours, I had met with land management staff out at the Public Works Customer Service Center, in which several employees, there was probably 25, 30 employees in the room, several employees expressed concerns about the energy and comments of some residents, particularly in board meetings, that have come to board meetings and provided public comment and called out staff by name. And then folks like in code compliance that go out in the field, or building officials that are going out to people's property, and sort of the energy and concern that they feel, not across the board, but in certain incidences. There were comments last week at LMD where they were concerned about, that I heard concern about, the role that the board plays in particular in drawing a line between the right of the public, certainly, to come in and seek redress from its government, right, to express concern and ask for intervention, but also when it maybe starts to creep up to a line where individuals are being called out and people start feeling threatened in some way. I then went on with the morning, and received two almost simultaneous emails from different attorneys in our organization about concerns that have been brought up both in our assessment and taxation office. And both of these were requests for me to trespass individuals. One, that a taxpayer that had been threatening and harassing in the assessment and taxation office. They have also asked for sort of a threat assessment, a safety and threat assessment, and assessment taxation is the front counter office that the public comes to, and they're feeling more and more concerned and vulnerable, I'd say. Then I got another message from a different attorney within our organization about a concern from a client in the community health centers at a different facility, and a request to trespass an individual who had likewise, the concern was they had been threatening and harassing in that place. So just a few examples for you of incidences. I know and then certainly there have been incidences here more recently, also recently, in the public service building that's required a trespass of at least one individual who has, communicated with a number of officials at different levels of our organization and other governments locally, and caused a lot of concern there. So the discussion today, I think, my understanding of the request was to sort of create some clarity around what policies and procedures exist, and maybe what policies and procedures don't exist, and what is the board's role in this overall effort. This is, a bit of anytime you talk about safety, it's an all hands on deck kind of thing, that we have a lot of different folks involved in creating a safe environment. I would offer that I think they're both issues around physical safety and around psychological safety, where I didn't bring the book with me, but I'm teaching a class at the University of Oregon called Public Sector Leadership, and we're reading this book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And in that book, and I apologize, I meant to bring it and quote this line, but he talks about sort of the issue of psychological safety. And we feel really strongly about this. I feel very strongly about this as a leader in this organization, that we do our best work as employees when we feel supported and empowered by our leadership and by our supervisors, and that when we can have freedom and flexibility, autonomy, mastery, purpose, right? Those things are really important to high-performing employees. When the reverse is true and people don't feel either physical or psychological safety, you start to get constraint and fear and resistance, or just people not operating in their best, right? Because they're coming at it from a different perspective. And so these issues around physical and psychological safety in the workplace are really important, both for people's health and safety and wellness, as well as for how well we can perform as an organization to respond to the needs in the community. So that, and then I'll just offer in the charter, section 26, I'll go through these real quickly and then I will stop, the safety related policies. In the charter, section 26, talks about this because you all asked about specifically the role of commissioners. As elected commissioner, you're included in the unclassified service of the county. I know historically there's been debate about, well, are commissioners employees of the organization? Of course, you are elected officials, so we don't oftentimes refer to commissioners as employees of the organization, but within the charter, which is the county's constitution, commissioners are included in the unclassified service of the county. And then within the Lane Manual, under Lane Manual section 2.040.192 sub D, it quotes, persons employed in the unclassified service are expected to comply with personnel policies and procedures implementing them that are designed to encourage respectful behavior among employees and with members of the public, or that are designed to reduce liability for the county. These include, but are not limited to, the policies described in. It cites the drug-free workplace policy, the sexual harassment policy, the workplace violence policy, the diversity policy, and other areas. So charter, manual, board orders. I mentioned the board order that you've adopted related to meeting roles and rules of conduct, how you interact with the public. And then the other layer is the APM, the Administrative Procedures Manual. Just again, for the layers of these, charter acts like our local constitution. It was enacted by the voters of Lane County. You then have the county code, which is ordinances that the board adopts that tend to be more community-facing laws. You talked yesterday, right, about codes. So you have the county code that then is the next layer down. And then you have the Lane Manual, which is a layer under that. Things that go in the manual are policies the board adopt, oftentimes via resolution. So this lives in the manual. And then under the manual, so that has to be amended by board resolution or order. And then the APM, the Administrative Procedure Manual, is authority for policies established within the APM, which are like day-to-day administrative procedures, rest with the county administrator. You've delegated that authority to the administrator. So the APM includes workplace violence, Chapter 3, Section 2, Issue 1, safety program, and we linked all these. So workplace violence, safety program, corrective action, harassment, discrimination, mobbing, and retaliation, emergency notifications to employees, and those are those. So I just offer those. That's not all of the APM. The APM is a really lengthy document. But the question was, and what I asked our staff, Judy Williams in our office, to work with human resources and others to pull together any policies that exist. So that's why we're referencing charter, manual, the board order, and the APM. I mentioned the board safety protocols that we recently agreed to. That's not a shareable document, that we're sort of sensitive with that information because of the sensitivity of that as well. We also have an emergency action plan for the public service building and the courthouse. That's also not a document that is that we share widely because it has information that is sensitive related to safety related policies and procedures. So I think I'll just stop there. I do have some additional, kind of like, we have Policies and Procedures Committee and some other things you may want to talk about, but just wanted to share that information with you, and happy to answer any questions that I'm able to.
Thank you, Steve, for that overview. And I think one of the most important things, there's a lot that's important in there, but this is a workplace. And when we are having our board meetings, when we are in our offices, when we are having conversations with staff, whether formal through scheduled meetings or informally in the hallway, this is a workplace. And all the policies are in play in the workplace, and they apply to us as commissioners. The difference is the evident course of action or accountability for someone who experiences a violation of those policies, because we're accountable to voters and not subject to some of the same kind of processes. It's very clear what the process is if someone experiences a violation of those policies who is at any other level in this organization other than an elected official. So we're accountable to one another, and that's why we're doing this as a work session and sort of conversational format. And it's not about ideological or policy differences. This is about how we conduct ourselves and who we put at risk, and recognizing the power dynamic that is inherent at all times in us being the elected leadership of this organization. That it's not a level playing field when we're having conversations with staff at any level of the organization. Again, we don't have a lot of structure for this. And as I mentioned, this was really precipitated by one very specific incident and action that created extra layer of risk and a sense of threat for one of our direct employees, in fact, which is why we went to the virtual format at our April 2nd meeting, and why we agreed to follow up with this work session to have a very direct conversation about those issues. So I will open it up to the board. I'd like to start by inviting Commissioner Buck, who made the assignment to have this meeting, see if she would like to kick us off, but if not, we can
Sure.
take it from there.
Thank you, Chair. I think out of transparency to the public, we can start off with the incident that created the situation of a virtual meeting last week. It came to my attention and the rest of the board's attention that there was a communication between Commissioner Lovell and a person of the public that is known to be a public safety threat and risk to individuals within not only our organization, but other agencies in the county, and encouraging them to attend one of our meetings where the content was to specifically target our county council. And this communication was sent without notifying the employee, without considering a safety plan for the employee, other staff, residents that may be coming to do public comment, or fellow commissioners' safety. So this is, not an isolated context. I want to create the context here that this isn't just in and of itself, one incident. This is surrounded by a context of Commissioner Lovell having a great deal of animosity toward our county council, also known to, or suspected to, carry a firearm in the county against county policy, creating not only a psychological threat to our staff, but us ourselves as commissioner, including myself and residents in the public, and creating a space where staff doesn't feel safe personally as well, their physical safety. And it also puts me on edge as a commissioner as well, knowing that I'm not sure what I'm walking into when I come to a meeting or I come into the hallway to my office. And creates an air of a toxic culture. And this is the antithesis of what I think us as a Board of County Commissioners want to create as values within our organization, and what we want to present to the public in a professional workplace environment. Commissioners' duty is to encourage a safe environment for all. And this particular correspondence with the overlaying context kind of tore that down very easily, in creating a space where some people don't feel comfortable coming into the workplace anymore. Personally, I felt like that communication was unbecoming of a commissioner, certainly unbecoming of one that's within a leadership role within our board. That's not what leadership is about. Leadership is an activity, and part of that activity is creating safe spaces for us to come together, our staff to do their work, and the public to be able to come in and give us their testimony in a safe environment. What I really like, I don't think this is, a one and done kind of conversation today. I believe we should and be interested in having a longer ongoing conversation about what we do as a board when incidents like this come to us. We know that we are accountable primarily to our voters. They are the ones that put us in these seats. But one commissioner is not necessarily following the rules that are bound to us as employees of the organization, or those that are really the antithesis of what we want to see in our fellow colleagues towards the public and towards our staff. What do we do? What rises to the level where we need to have a conversation about what that should look like on the board? This is kind of uncharted territory. We haven't really had to address this, at least while I've been commissioner, and I haven't necessarily heard this in the past. But please correct me, Commissioner Farr, you've been here longer than all of us and may have some history that I'm not aware of. But this kind of behavior needs to be addressed as colleagues. And I don't know where we want to lay out a conversation about what we would do if we're experiencing these kinds of issues. And it may be a case where we need some assistance, some consultation. We've had some wonderful consultation that provided us with how we wanted to work together amongst ourselves yesterday that we passed with a great consultant. But we don't have that with our staff, between commissioners and staff. And I feel like that's certainly a next step that we should talk about, but also it will require facilitation, I think, because this is uncharted territory. But at the same time, it's really a board decision. And so I'd like to just start off the conversation with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think it's important, two things you said. One, that it's not a one and done, that this is the start and a conversation. And I think it's an opportunity for each of us to sort of weigh in and hear from each other before going to what do we do about it, to make sure we're all talking about the same it before we decide what to do about it. And the different roles we play. And as the administrator clearly laid out for us, this is an issue throughout the organization, but they're very clearly and specific to the incident you highlighted, where we always have an opportunity to set a tone, and we can either explicitly or implicitly set that tone. And an explicit tone was set in that particular incident of encouraging someone with a long known history and in fact a convicted felony record of making threats of physical violence. And as you mentioned, that extra layer of it being specifically to incite that person to come and speak against our direct employee, where there is some history there. So I think it's all of a piece, but we are talking broadly as well as specifically here about our role and the tenor that we set when staff comes before us at board meetings, as well as in other interactions. Any other commissioners care to think out loud or make a comment, reflection?
Well, there are several different categories of response. The first is regarding threats from outside. Threats from the general public. Back in 13, 14, we had an issue with a no-kill shelter. you remember that, Steve? Most of that was a little bit before you got here, where there were people who were very adamant about the fact that Lane counties didn't operate a no-kill animal shelter. Water way under the bridge, and it's not even something that raises itself, but the people who were involved in that were pretty extreme in some of their responses, including chalking threats on the sidewalk as you walk down from 8th Avenue with 3 commissioners named in the threats, actually names written on the sidewalk. Now, and other than that, we've all had, I think I have had people say, well, wait till I catch you on the street. I've had people drive by my house on numerous occasions, looking, had people come singing in front of my house, standing in my driveway, doing things. All of this is more or less, Steve, in the distant past. Some of it before you were here, some of it was after you were here. We also had the incident, I don't remember, when George Poling, the Eugene City Councilor, had people actually camping on his lawn. So we have threats from the outside on a regular basis that are handled in the course of business. Now, when it's happening to you, it doesn't feel like business. And when my name's chalked on the sidewalk, I wonder if I'm safe walking through the next door. But that being said, in the last few years, people have been a little bit more aggressive in the way they choose to make threats. And I think, and I have some personal experience. You've heard my commentary about being my son's spouse being thrown over the wall along with my grandchild from threats that otherwise, years ago didn't happen. So I think we have a new environment that we have to take a brand new look at the way we perceive even the slightest threats from the outside. And we make certain that we have a standard response internally that we all are not accustomed to, that we're all attuned to, and that we all behave the same way. And as it says in here, let's see, get on the same page, seek alignment. Well, there's without digging through this, but that we're all responding in the same fashion, that we act uniformly. And I think it's important, this is a good time to have this discussion, because we are looking at a different kind of environment on the street. I mean, a few years ago, Congress was invaded, wasn't it? I mean, people broke into Congress. Who would have thought that that could possibly happen in these United States, since the British did it in 1812, So I think this is not a good time. This is the time that we have to bring that to the forefront and make certain that we do have a uniform response and a set of protocols in place that keep the people who are in the most vulnerable positions in the organization safe, and also that every single person inside of the organization feels that they're protected by the organization and by the people that they work with and around.
Thank you. I just want to do an audio check. Tanya, do we have adequate audio? I know when we're having this kind of discussion, we're sort of just talking to ourselves and we're all using the one central mic. So I want to ensure that we have good audio on this. Can you tell?
Yeah, we do have good audio. I can't tell what your screen shows in the room, but we are broadcasting and everything is going through okay.
You can hear fine. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Mm-hmm. And just one other point that happened that happened to us personally, us being my family, as my youngest child was being continually targeted by an outside person, sometimes through emails through my office, which we at the time it was intercepted and it was handled, and my youngest child never felt threatened by it directly. And that person, not because of this incident, that person did end up serving time in jail for threatening behavior. So, but once again, that was, we've been in San Francisco now for 10 years, so that was 10 years ago that was happening.
Commissioner Buck?
I really appreciate that. You're right, we're not a novice in having threats come to commissioners necessarily. I've had threats myself. But when the threats are facilitated by another commissioner, that's a whole new level that I don't think that we have necessarily had to contemplate before. And that's why I felt like we needed to have a different kind of conversation. And and figure out, like, what do we do when that happens? At what level is that something that we actually want to take action on as a board? And lay it out so that we have a policy in place, so when that happens, we know what to do. This particular case, we're very, we had to react in a very quick amount of time when a lot of people were out on vacation, and that was really challenging for our staff, and I don't want to put them in that position anymore. I also want to find a way to recreate the trust and safety that we lost in this particular incident.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck, for bringing it back to our actions. And again, absolutely centering that specific incident and that specific inciting email, but also broadly the tenor and tone with which we receive information from staff in our meetings when they're presenting to us. That's come up in the moment at board meetings, and we've heard feedback, and I think our administrator could really affirm some of those experiences of some of our staff as well. So again, it's about us setting a tone, and then out in the community when we're inviting people to come speak before us, what kind of framing we're encouraging them to bring into the setting of our meetings. I think that is exactly what we're here to discuss. Commissioner Farr.
I'll go to historically again, and this is things that have happened since you did get here, Steve. Let's take the front desk. We have a history and a pattern of addressing safety issues as they arise, and sometimes they arise in more of a benign fashion, sometimes it's preemptive. When I first came here, Deanie, there was a door and no glass and no shield. There's a counter right there. It's kind of where your desk is right now. There's a big post right there, I think his desk was right there. Anybody could walk in that front door. And then there was a cafe door that led back to everything with no locks between the front desk, and anybody could have walked straight through that. And Steve, you can help with history on this. We did a remodel I guess that was mostly complete by the time you got here, but the remodel included making sure that front desk was safe. So we're taking physical safety steps, and the desk was relocated. And at first it didn't have glass, just still a desk right there where Cam is now. So we continue to take small steps towards safety. And I think, the administration has taken safety very, very seriously. Once again, I think we're in a different era right now where we need to take a look at what is the next level of safety that everybody can personally adhere to and personally feel safe in the workplace. So, I just want to point out, Stephen, once again, some of this has happened since you got here. Some of the safety issues. Recently, we made the glass in front of the front desk impenetrable, and I continue to ask Cam, do you feel safe up there? And Cam does feel safe up there. And it's not because of passive safety measures. It was very aggressive safety measures that created the safety that is in place right there. So let's take that to the next step at this point in time. Let's talk more about it.
I appreciate the willingness to continue the conversation and figure out where we go from here. I don't have any particular ideas on what we should do, other than maybe finding a time and asking for a facilitator or consultant. I'm not sure if the same consultant is the right one. To help us walk through what would be the steps and actions that we should consider in putting together a policy to address, when either the psychological or the physical safety of our staff and residents are put into question when it's an action amongst a board member.
I think I'm going deep back into my history again. As in private business, when we wanted to make changes, we looked to see what other people were doing, and got a good feeling for what other, not to copy them, but to see what was working, what wasn't working. And when you look at what other people are doing, it doesn't ever apply directly to what you're doing, but you can see some of the protocols that are in place. And I wonder if that's something that we could do, have done, or if it's within our capability of doing. See what Washington County is doing, for instance, and not, and counties where there's a population center, counties where there is maybe a little bit more unpredictable of a populace. I hate to say unpredictable. More people that Washington County, Clackamas County, adjacent to a large metropolitan area, Multnomah County. See what they're doing to keep the people who work there at the highest level of safety.
I didn't know if you wanted to respond to that.
Just to say, when I was county manager in Douglas County, Nevada, we went through a process over the course of a year where the board established a document that was called something like the board norms and procedures. Mm-hmm. And it encompassed how the board interacts with the public, which you already have established, the prior boards and this board continues to adopt, but it also included how the board and staff interact, and, expectations the board has for staff, expectations staff have for just what that interaction looks like. It also talked about how the board works together as a body and kind of the different roles. So, you have some layer of those. You have the interaction with the public piece. You've started to establish some foundations around how you work together, but certainly, expanding that into what it looks like to interact with your staff on a regular basis would be another option.
And Steve, the Capitol in Salem was in around the turn of the century. That started heightening security inside of the Capitol. It used to be free for all. Anybody could just walk into the Capitol, any door, and there was no impedance to people coming in. Even the underground parking was open, and they gradually started adding security measures there, and not just for the elective, not just for the House and the Senate, but for the people who work there, who were very vulnerable also. And I wonder if there's something that we can look at that the state actually did to make their facilities and their organization feel safer for the people working there.
Something, when you bring that up, Commissioner, I'm thinking about, it's a great example to talk about Salem. I think a lot of what's at issue here and what we're trying to get to the heart of is what happens when it's a commissioner that commits the violation. Mm-hmm. What is the accountability and what is the process for addressing that? Because all of these things are important that you're mentioning, but not all of the preventive or reactive measures can be addressed with physical, reinforced glass or other infrastructure. It is about a proactive mindset on the part of us as leaders of what we see that role to be in setting a tone. And so what they did in Salem was, yes, on the heels of the breaches of safety and security there, much paralleling what happened in D.C. on January 6th. Prior to that, there were matters where members of the legislature were seen to be violating certain standards of conduct. And the legislature themselves, as peers, created a House Conduct Committee or something like that, it was called, where they had a group. Of course, they're a much larger body than we are. That's a challenge as well, right? There's only 5 of us, but they had a body that was tasked with discussing what is conduct becoming of those elected offices, what is considered a breach or a violation, and how do we as peers address that? I think that's really what we're trying to get at here. I think our administrator is aware and committed and capable of working with his leadership team to address the physical infrastructure of our facilities and the practices, the everyday operations and practices to keep people who work out in the field, who have front desk services that they're providing to keep them safe. We had a huge incident with elections recently, right, of receiving suspicious substances in the mail. We have an opportunity and an option to address that or not from the dais, and how we do and what we say about it. So yes, we're talking about that, but we're also talking about our own direct actions and the way we conduct ourselves when we are interacting directly with the public and with our staff. And if any one of us experiences or witnesses a violation of a workplace policy, how do we address that? How do we hold one another accountable? There is not a process in place to do that the way there is if it were a staff member who had done such a thing.
You know, my first thoughts on that are making it not happen in the first place. You know, anything, it's the art of war. You know, the old book, The Art of War, the best way to fight a battle is to win a battle is to not fight it. So identify as many of the types of things that we're talking about and make sure it's clear in everybody's mind what we can't do. Because sometimes people will commit a breach not knowing they are committing a breach. And I'm not making any statements about any particular incident, but making certain that everybody's aware of what can be done and what cannot be done, what is okay and what's not okay. And then it becomes a little bit more obvious when it really is a willful violation of protocol. So, and I think that's worthy of discussion to see how close we are to that and what it would take to get us to the point where everybody's on that same page.
Do the other commissioners have any contributions?
Well, I'm sitting here and I was wondering, you know, because we keep going back to this incident. I mean, was this the intent? I mean, let's talk it out. Commissioner Lovell, do you have that email you sent? I don't have it off the top of my head, but
Yeah, I can get it.
I mean, what was the email in itself that we're talking about? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
No, it's good. It's all right. Yeah, I've got it. Would you want me to read the email first or unpack what I've been notating here? I mean, I'll answer your question. I'll just answer your email. I said, Dear Michael, I've read with muse and interest your emails for the past 14 months. I've been in office after upsetting Commissioner Joe Berney's seat. Our next scheduled board meeting is Tuesday, April 2nd in Harris Hall. All you need to do is come at 8:45 a.m. and sign the sheet next to the entry door. The meeting commences at 9 a.m. and public comments are early in the meeting, but limited to 3 minutes. It's most effective when you are factual and don't emotionally rant. I believe you have a lot to say and can do so very well. It is your right as a citizen of our county to be able to voice your opinion. Warmly, Commissioner Lovell.
Would you like to add what that email was in response to, the subject line that initiated his communications?
Well, the
to us
subject
that you
line
wure
is chair is
responding to?
immaterial because
I
I've
don't
got.
think it is. That
Well,
is my
are you
point.
going to interrupt me, or am I going to be able to say what I want to say? Do I have the floor now, or do you?
You had the floor,
Thank you.
and I asked a question.
All right, then I have the floor, so I'll take the floor. Thank you, Chair. The emails, this is no different than any subject matter email that I did in the last 2 months, which is these emails I sent these people with pretty much the same wording that I sent his. This one here says, I'd love for you to come to the board meeting and give a public testimony to bring this to our attention. Your voice matters. If you would like a personal meeting with Commissioner Sanigan and I, let's look at our schedules and get something on the books. I can go on. These emails are the same. I might suggest you come and give a 3-minute testimony to other commissioners, the reason not to vote against this. My suggestion, if you feel strongly about it, is to give a 3-minute public testimony to the City Council about your objections and the County Commission. Free speech is your constitutional right. Far too often, policies, which are not law, prevail because the only ones who show up to complain are the whiners without reason. I can go on. These are the same words I've used over and over again. The subject matter doesn't matter. What matters here, Chair, mostly is a citizen wanted to air a grievance about somebody or some form of government in front of their government. That is their constitutional right. All of us swore an oath to that. It's written on my office wall, and anyone who doesn't keep the oaths of what they promised in the Constitution is committing treason. Now, if this person wanted to come and make a comment in public, there's ways that he could do that. Further, this person that you're talking about has been given access to the building, the law library specifically, which is a mere 30 feet from the hallway of where all of us go to our cars to the office. So if this person was a public threat, why was he given access for the whole time I've been in office to the law library? Further, as of Monday, I confirmed this with the Sheriff's Department, he was not considered a public threat to the building as of Monday. He was not labeled. Further, I have never been briefed about this person in a meeting, and I think what really, I'm sorry, Commissioner Sending, if you have more to say, I didn't mean to go off here. I think what we're really talking about here is there's two main issues here: assumptions and feelings being expressed as facts. I think the assumption is that all of us new commissioners, Commissioner Senegai, are on the same page of the three of you that have been here for a number of years. We weren't given a briefing on threats, people, past instances. We were not given a meeting about people we should watch out for, email threads that are particularly violating people's rights or instilling fear. We were not given any of this kind of briefing. So the feeling that we should have known, how should we have known is the thing. The second thing is that I asked part of the sheriff's staff is when does a keyboard warrior pose an actual threat risk? I mean, Commissioner Farr, you gave the instance of sidewalk chalk and all that. That was obviously before social media was such an issue. But I get social media comments all the time that if I want to, I could consider threatening, but they're just keyboard warrior things, right? Here's the other thing. Does the sheriff's office have a list of people actively on a threat list? Have I ever seen one? I've never seen one. Has any one of my colleagues seen one? Okay, so how would we know if this person was a threat? As the time Mr. Ajazi was invited to address this government in a 3-minute testimony, was he on that list? He wasn't. Okay, that's fact. I'm not leaving feeling, that's just fact. And I'm not trying to discount anyone's feelings of how they felt. I'm just kind of operating on facts, okay? Because you're trying to accuse me of operating in an environment where I didn't give credence to people's emotions, and all I'm doing is giving you facts. And isn't the oath of which each one of us elected officials swore to was to support the Constitution of the United States? Let me just review that just so everybody knows it. In the United States, the right to petition is enumerated in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. It essentially means that citizens have the right to seek remedies or solutions for their grievances from government without fear of retribution. One of these risks represent democracies that elected officials may favor the narrow partisan interests of the most powerful supporters or choose to advance their own personal interests instead of viewing themselves as faithful agents of their constituents. I'm a faithful agent of constituents, not just of Springfield, but the constituents of Lane County. A robust right to petition is designed to minimize such risks. By being forced to acknowledge and respond to petitions from ordinary persons, officials become better informed and must openly defend their positions, enabling voters to pass more informed judgment. So that's my opinion. Now let me go to something else here that I want to say. And really, in light of all of this, the reason I'm asking this is, Mr. Mokryski, thank you for bringing Simon Sinek's book to the table. His reason is why. And I think we need to express that. Why are we here? What is the why of today? And Commissioner Buck, you said I have no particular ideas of where to go. Then why are we here? We're here to create a process of everyone having the same information. That's what I want to be here for. And I believe that's what you want to have, Chair. Let me just also remind the Chair of what her position is as Chair. So if we're being honest here, the Chair, according to the leading government's website, is to ensure the board as a whole considers issues and reaches decisions. The Chair does not make unilateral decisions, impose their will, or unduly influence the opinions of other board members. A good Chair has excellent listening skills and is able to bring people together constructively. The process of which this meeting happened, I think, was encapsulated really well yesterday by the public testimony of Mike McFadden, when he said he was very uncomfortable about the nebulous accusations of perceived risk. If someone did, there's a legal process to handle this, but there needs to be due process. And what you're asking here, I think, is worthy. In this meeting, we're asking for due process. We're not looking for blame. We're not looking at some sort of blame to where some person did something, in your opinion, that he should have known or not should have known. We're looking for a process. We owe the public an explanation. And that's what Mike wanted us to do, was owe the public an explanation. You said yesterday, Chair, in the meeting, you said we want to gently hold one another accountable. And so I ask you in this last, and then one more comment. Mary Ann said yesterday, part of the continuing process is mending and repair. So I'm asking you to consider the process by which this last week's events unfolded and how you handled it. Was your process to mend and repair, or was your process a vindictive process over one commissioner? So I want to ask you that. Commissioner Buck, you said that leadership is an activity of safe spaces for us to come together for the public to come into and give us their testimony in a safe environment. You just said what I believe. The public needs to come into and give us their testimony in a safe environment. There's a vehicle of which Mr. Ajazi, given whatever threat level you perceived him to be, can come in and give us their testimony in a safe environment. He was given the option to go down and do that in the law library. There's ways of which people whom we are fearful of can come and give their testimony. But it's imperative constitutionally that they give their testimony. That is an oath we swore to. And I will give that oath and that right to anyone who asks me how to do that. And that's all I answered. Your feelings about how I may feel about someone or not are not based on fact. They're based on your feelings and your perceptions. I want to also say, Mr. Milkar-Heiske, you said that different department directors identify thematic goals every 6 months. First I'd ever heard about that. Never heard about that. First I've ever heard that the current employee thematic goal is employee safety. First I've heard about that. And I was thinking, if you knew that back in September, why wasn't that given to us as some sort of concern to be on my mind? That's 6 months ago. I would think that would be important information to share with the board. If there's a perceived public safety issue, then perhaps I might have gone to the chair and said, hey, this guy's emailing us. What do you think we should do? And further, I'm a little put off, Chair, that my job as vice chair is to make you look good. That's my job. My job as vice chair is to help you in any way I can to do your job the best way possible. I am committed to that 100%. And what I would like in return is communication between the two of us, so the two of us can lead the board in the direction that we believe the board is capable of going. And we can't do that if one of us is at angst with the other. I understand you and I have differences of opinions. We come from a different perspective, but we can work together. And I'm committed to working with you. I'm not committed to doing this end-around stuff and calling out someone who is doing their job to the best of their ability with the information they had in the moment. Those are the facts. Now, I'm here to create a process. I believe we do need a process for this. I believe we need a public safety briefing on an ongoing basis. I believe we have to have people who have been known suspects and perpetrators of safety and concerns within the employee base who they're concerned with. We should know about that. And you and I need to have a dialogue, a constant dialogue of those temperatures of what's going on for us to better serve the board and for us to be better leaders. That's what I'd like to see.
Clearly, there's quite a bit of energy around this topic, and we do need to have more conversation. For the record, I absolutely, since you asked, Commissioner Seneca, first of all, you asked about intent. We're here to talk about impact, which is one of our working agreements. It is absolutely relevant what the topic of the email was that you responded to, inviting this person to come and talk to us. The initiation of that conversation was that person targeting our county council and trying to fan the flames of a directive that she lose her job. So that is different. That is context that matters. No one is denying someone their right to come speak before us by not encouraging them to do so. I also stand by there is nothing that requires us to provide a public comment period, but we all agree that it is a valuable part of our meeting, so we do it. And we can't pick and choose who gives comment. I absolutely do have the authority. I checked with a number of people before making the decision to go virtual to do that as the chair, because in fact, the job of the chair is to facilitate effective meetings. And if we couldn't have an effective meeting under the conditions that were set, then it's my job to figure out how to do that. And facilitating the meeting is both practically and also fiscal implication to ensure the safety of our staff. There would have been a cost to doing that had we met in person. So I stand by my decision. We have a disagreement and a difference of understanding of what the role of the chair is. I agree that you and I need to work together. This is why on numerous occasions I've come to you with county business, with questions about items that may or may not come before us and what the timing of that is, invited you out for conversations off-site. So I don't appreciate the attempt to paint me as someone who has been resistant to working with you or communicating with you about matters of the board's interest and the organization's interest. Bringing us back to what brought us here. This is a broader conversation about the tone that we set as leaders for when our staff comes before us and how we talk about this organization and the work of this organization out in the public and with our constituents. And this is about a specific incident that caused a great deal of stress and anxiety for the targeted staff member, for her staff, many of whom have now opted to work off-site for the time being, for others in this organization, in this community, law enforcement, judicial officials, other staff in other departments who've interacted with this individual, who in your email response to him makes clear you have been reading the tone and tenor of the kinds of threats he has sent over more than a year. So there's clearly more to talk about here. And I agree with Commissioner Buck, and it is evidenced by the direction this conversation's gone today, that we need some facilitation and support for having that conversation.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that assessment, Chair. Pardon me. Thank you. I think we're at a point right now where we have the future ahead of us, and we have a lot of work to do, and we have to be able to do it as a team of commissioners. And we have a good set of operating agreements that we've all agreed to, and I believe if we adhere to these from this point forward, we can absolutely be a board that will handle the very difficult challenges ahead of us, whether it be housing, whether it be homelessness, whether it be public safety, whatever the issues may be, but we all have to be on the same page. And I think this would be a good time to have this discussion facilitated, Mr. Markowski. I agree with the chair on that we could talk about not just about what brought us to this point, but how do we handle where we are at this moment in time, and how do we move forward to the best way that we can serve the 370,000 people in Lane County.
I want to add that not only do we have these working agreements, but since Vice Chair mentioned, I'm totally paraphrasing here because I'm not taking verbatim notes as you're speaking, but sort of an implication that you can't be held responsible for upholding something that you didn't know exists. We all have had available to us, and as employees have had the opportunity to see, and they've been elevated for us in preparation for today. What we have in addition to the working agreements is our APM and our workplace policies that very clearly outline the expectations of people who work here in upholding a workplace free of violence, a workplace free of harassment and intimidation and retaliation, and so on. So we have a lot of tools available to us. And again, the conversation is, how are we as a board using those tools in how we interact with our staff, with the public, and with one another? Anything else for today? Any other comments? All right,
Give me a moment to think about.
you got it.
I think a lot has been stated here today, and I think it's going to take some, on my part, I'm going to listen to the tape over and over again of what's been stated in this meeting, and really, as we move forward, we have got to work together as a team. We all have common interests. And this document helps us to focus on what our common interests are. And if there are things that are detrimental, respect each other as elected leaders. And then if you experience conflict with someone that is eroding trust and respect, address it with them clearly, directly, and privately. So I think we have these agreements we did agree to a long time ago that were kind of codified yesterday by board order. But if we take a look at this and move forward, bearing this in mind as our agreed upon code of conduct, that's not what it's called, it's just a working agreement for the Board of County Commissioners, then we can address issues that have happened, make certain they don't happen again, and make sure that we all understand how we can interact with one another with, in some cases, vastly different views of how we, of what it is we'd like to accomplish. But generally speaking, I don't think our views aren't that different. We serve the people that we serve, and we all know that we have vulnerable people in our community that need us to pull together, not just as this team, but to draw other teams into our net of competence in addressing the issues and using our ever so scarce resources to do what we can. Wasting resources on conflict that's eroding trust and respect, wasting resources on that is not something that we can afford to do. So I think we need to move forward in a way that potentially a facilitator who none of us know, who knows none of us, would be able to help us with it, and somebody who perhaps has had experience in this kind of a general environment that we're living in. So that's the direction I'd like to see us move from this point forward, is to agree on it as a Board of Commissioners, and to agree that, boy, whatever itch I have on my arm, this is going to help ease it, and it's going to help us all to work together. And if we do respect each other as people and elected leaders, and we do earn and strengthen trust and build relationships and get to know each other, adhere to our words and be accountable and act consistently, if we do all of these things, we've got the best bet, the best opportunity to resolve the issues that we all know are in front of us. That's let's view this as a valuable moment in time where we can get together and understand that without this, it's going to be very, very difficult. But with this, we have a agreed upon pathway forward.
So I'm hearing agreement that doing some work with a facilitator is something everyone would be agreeable to. We have developed some connection and relationship and with Mary Ann Highland. I don't know that it's required that we figure out today who that person is, but that is certainly would save some steps if we wanted to re-engage. What is there a sort of status with her with the organization as far as she's sort of on standby and ready to come back? Have you had any conversation along those lines with her? Do we know?
I would say, Chair and Commissioners, that that's the what. Mm-hmm. And so to go back to this example of the why, we can certainly accommodate identifying a facilitator. Mary Ann seems to have done a great job, and you all have a comfort level working with her, and she, I think, has the skill set to do that. It'd be really helpful to understand what you want to accomplish out of this, right? Like, what's the result of the work that you're trying to aim at? The why, the purpose behind that. That would be helpful, and then if you can sort of identify that end result, that goal, then we can sort of figure out the pieces to help you get to that place.
Well, I think, and also just to bring us back to, the reason we have this work session today was it was a assignment request that received head nods. A commissioner made the request that we have this follow-up conversation, and it received head nods to do so, and that's why we're here. That was a peer-led decision, and it wasn't anything anyone made unilaterally.
And with that decision, of course,
Yeah.
we're all remote. I just happened
That's
to be more remote. But a part of that was that it wasn't just a single incident we were looking at.
That's right.
We were looking at a path forward for the future to review how it is we behave as a board, not behave how we conduct ourselves as a board, and how do we move forward from this point. I think we're on the verge of accomplishing that last part right now, Mr. Mulcahy, with what you're starting to think about, whether it be, I said somebody we don't know. I think the other alternative is somebody who knows us intimately, which is Mary Ann Hyland. But, moving forward as a board, I'm not going to beat this to death, but we're falling behind 1,200 units a year right now of housing. That is daunting. How can we move forward on that without acting in complete concert as a board? Even though we may have different views and different ideas as to how to move forward on that, we have got to do it. The tasks in front of us are daunting. We can't let a lack of respect for each other as people and elected leaders, or conflict that's eroding trust and respect, get in the way of us doing the things that we have to do. So let's view this as a point in time to grasp that opportunity, Mr. Mulcahy, and move forward with this fresh in our hands.
So I think maybe there's the why. The why is to help us figure out how we functionally operationalize these agreements, so that we can get the work of the organization done.
Yeah.
I think it's also like, how do we hold each other accountable? Because we say we generally want to hold each other accountable, but how do we do that? And if somebody is not keeping up with being accountable, what do we do? How do we address that? Not only for their staff's sake, for our sake, but most importantly for the public's sake. So although we have general working agreements, we don't necessarily have a code of conduct for ourselves, or what consequences there are should we not meet those codes. So hopefully that can be part of this process.
Yeah, and sort of fundamentally baked into that is when we don't agree that something is out of alignment, because clearly from the comments from Vice Chair, there's a sense of sort of sides or people trying to attack, as opposed to even this being seen as this is a collective conversation. We are a body trying to figure out how we will move forward, given that there is some actions that have been taken that some perceive one way and others perceive another, and some weren't even perceiving, it wasn't even on the radar. Like, that's the fundamental thing. We experience one another differently. And so the working agreements are a great foundation, but how we actually bring them to life in a way that is functional.
And all of them, remember how Mary Ann left yesterday? Have grace for one another. We all make mistakes. We got to go full circle with this thing. Not always just assume the worst in people.
So I'm hearing agreement to consider re-engaging Mary Ann Hyland if she's available, and if not, maybe working with the administrator to find another facilitator who can come have some of these conversations, facilitate these conversations. So I would like that, because then we all get to participate fully and on an equal playing field, rather than any one of us trying to facilitate the conversation and keep track of more than just being a full participant. So I think that would also be beneficial for me, I would say.
If I may, Chair, we can't afford to be a mirror of what's happening in national politics.
That's right.
In our organization. We cannot afford to be that. We have to be way above that. We're nonpartisan in nature, and there's a reason that our charter states that we're nonpartisan in nature. That erases party as a means of, as a natural conflict. I'm looking at today's Register Guard. It's full of conflict. It's full of political conflict where people are calling people names, and their supporters are calling other supporters names, and it's on the verge, in some cases, of stone throwing. And I use that metaphorically. So we can't afford to do that in our small world that we have right here. And we should be able to step well above that and focus on the faces of the people who we are trying to serve, and let those faces predicate how we serve.
I think that's really important, and I think that will be a good part of our conversation with the facilitator, because you said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I heard in a way using partisan and political interchangeably, and they're not. This is inherently political work. We are policy makers. We are doing political work. And decisions about collecting and expending public dollars and using other public resource and addressing basic human needs and all those things are political decisions, but partisanship is different. And I think that is, as you say, that's an important conversation as far as to what extent we're reflecting, because we do reflect what's happening nationally in terms of perspectives and experiences and levels of power or influence or authority and so on, but we don't have to reflect what's happening nationally in terms of the tenor with which we address those very difficult, conflict-ridden political issues. That is a subtle but really important distinction that is exactly what we need to get to.
And it is one that that I looked at definitions, and in our dictionary, you can choose which definition you choose to use on any particular word. This definition, relating to the ideas or strategies of a political party or group in politics, a decision taken for purely political reasons, relating to the government or the public affairs of the country. It can be well above partisan issues. Well, it's not. Let partisan issues predicate how we work. Let's let, I'll say it again, the faces of the people that we serve drive us in our motivation and drive us in how we serve, and how we commit our resources, and how we commit our personal time, and how we respect not just each other as people, but every single person that we're serving.
Anyone else want to say anything before we conclude for the morning? All right. Well, then, with that, I will thank everyone for their time, their thoughtfulness, their ability to make their schedules fit a Wednesday morning session. I'll just give a potential. We might have a few more of those coming. Also, just because a reminder, May is largely taken up with budget season, so our Tuesday afternoons are all budget all the time, which can sometimes make it hard to take care of all the rest of our business on Tuesdays. So doing your best to keep your calendars flexible on Wednesday mornings is appreciated. And without any other comment or business, we are adjourned until Tuesday, April 23rd. Thank you.
You said flexible.